Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So we're pretty familiar with this spiritual but not religious trend and all that. A lot of people have an issue with the fact that there's so many different religions, so many different claims of truth. How do we even go about establishing the truth? So I brought with me my brother today, Mustahsin, to discuss this sort of thing. Assalamu alaikum akhi.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. How are you, brother?
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. I'm good, bro. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on.
Inshallah. Not a problem, akhi. So me and you talk about this stuff quite a bit. Mashallah, we have some good conversations.
Alhamdulillah.
And so one of the biggest sort of questions we talk about that really trips a lot of people up, a lot of the reason people choose this sort of spiritual, not religious idea is the fact that, there's so many different religions, so many different claims to truth. How can we establish, the truth? They're all claiming to be true. What you got to say about that, Akhi?
I think that's a great question, man. That it's obviously a popular misunderstanding, I would say, based on intellectual laziness and just recycling that which we always hear and just narrate that to people. The very fact that obviously a question of many religions and therefore, so one angle is there's many religions, therefore none is true. Or another angle is that there are many religions, which one is true? That's a more better, more coherent, rational question to ask rather than therefore there's no true religion because there's so many. If we were to take that statement, the fact that there's many religions and therefore there's no truth, I like to give an analogy that a brother pondering souls, Yusuf, gives that. Imagine you had 10 fathers, each one is claiming to be the father of a child. Just because it's 10 or 100 does not mean therefore there's no father, or does not mean there's no truth. Or you could go extend it into conspiracy theories like 9/11. Just because there's so many conflicting models or theories who did 9/11 does not mean therefore no one did 9/11. It doesn't logically follow. And so the question, therefore, there's so many religions and therefore there's no truth, doesn't hold up any weight. However, what you was asking related to, though, which one is true? Is that what you was asking?
Yeah. How would we sort of go about establishing the truth?
You see, what you have to understand is, obviously, and another popular misunderstanding is, a lot of people say, oh, every religion just claims to be the right one, and how can we ever know? And there's also a hidden assumption in the question.
That all of them claim to be true.
Yeah. Not all religions actually even claim to be divinely inspired. The likes of Shintoism, Taoism, Buddhism, Confucianism, these ancient Eastern religions, for example, they don't claim to be from God. They don't claim that God's not a central, let's say, aspect. And then there's another claim that is, each one claims to be, let's say, divinely inspired. I mean, only divinely inspired. And again, that's false. Not all religions claim to be only truth, which is like, for example, Sikhism, as long as you're meditating on God's name, for example, according to the Guru Granth Sahib, which is their religious scripture, if you're meditating on God's name, you can attain salvation, i.e., you don't have to accept, let's say, Hinduism and Sikhism to attain salvation. You can. They're like, you could put them into a category of pluralistic religions where they allow you to have many, paths to attain salvation. So in a nutshell, just to summarize, not all religions claim to be true, and not all religions claim to be the only truth. And that is obviously both are false assumptions.
Right, that's right. So talking about this sort of spiritual but not religious trend, and the idea that so many different religions claim to be true, etc. Well, taking a step back from that, the reason that religion, seems to have sort of such a negative light in today's society. It's a popular trend. People think that science, rational thought, is so prevalent that we no longer need these ideas for supernatural beliefs, etc. But the fact is, obviously, we see astrology very popular, meditation increasingly popular. People talk about destiny, superstition. What else? Some things that people, are latch onto in today's society. Obviously, popular atheist speakers like Sam Harris endorsing the idea of spirituality. And these concepts don't necessarily fit this kind of super rational, no need for supernatural beliefs idea that people like to propagate.
Oh, definitely. Even aliens, a lot of
yeah.
put aliens as a valid prayer, but not God.
And it's not just laymen that talk about aliens, is it?
Yeah, no, cosmology. I think even Dawkins
Mm.
postulates as well aliens as a plausible explanation, like a higher intelligence.
So we've established that people look for some sort of fulfillment, some spiritual fulfillment, something beyond our sort of physical, naturalistic outlook in life. And in Islam, we call that the fitra, this innate disposition for a belief in God. And so we know that people want to believe in God. And we've established that this idea, or want to believe in something. And we've established this idea that all these different, philosophies or religions, it's not necessarily about having to look at them all. Because like you said, not even all of them claim to be true. So what sort of techniques can we use to narrow it down, to start looking, to narrowing down in our pursuit of the truth, so to speak?
This is a great question, man. Thanks for asking. What it is we have to use what I would call a rational filter of criteria. So, for example, if you're going to search a video on YouTube, you might filter it by popularity, by time, or if, for example, you might go, let's say, buying some clothes, you'd filter it by color, brand, size, and whatever. And so that's how you narrow options down, by using filters. And so I'd call it a rational filter. And once we use a rational filter, which is basically using certain rational criteria which we can agree upon without using it from an Islamic lens, once we apply a rational criteria, we start narrowing down options. So, for example, let's say a religion to be divinely inspired, it should be universal, because we know God is just. And if we apply, obviously, that aspect of a religion to be universal, we start, again, narrowing down options. If we agree, for example, monotheism is rational, which it is, and we can show, and therefore that will now necessitate polytheism and pantheism. If any religion holds to that, that can, again, be narrowed down. Inshallah, I'll be making videos on this, explaining each criteria and justifying each criteria in the future, inshallah. I plan to do some series on this, on rational criteria and how we can then filter out and narrow down the options.
MashaAllah. So when we talk about narrowing things down, we talk about the rationality behind things like monotheism, the fact that regardless of all these, we've got this innate disposition to want to search for spirituality, and we find things like monotheism have some epistemic weight to them. They have some value. We can rationally disprove ideas like polytheism, pantheism, etc. And so what's some of the sort of aspects that make Islam stand out?
Right, unique. So what we have to take a step back, and we just got to mention, of course, something that is unique doesn't mean it's true. And something that is unique doesn't mean it's even special, right? Now, what we're saying when it comes to Islam, though, the unique aspects do make it special. Like, I was reading it, like, Bible I was on the website. They're trying to justify how the Bible is unique, and one of the unique aspects they were saying it's because it's written by many authors, and I'm just like, right, okay, it's different, but it doesn't mean, now how does that mean it's special? So when we speak about
weight to it.
Yeah, exactly. It's got to be something that's special as well, that's unique. And for example, some examples of how Islam is unique. I'll just give one or two examples. Just taking the name Islam, right? Islam is not named after a person, tribe, place. Like Zoroastrianism is named after Zoroaster. Christianity is named after Christ. Judaism is named after the tribe Judah. Buddhism is named after Buddha. But Islam's not named after a human being. And even its definition has a profound meaning, which is submission to the creator. And once you submit, you attain that tranquility. That's one aspect. And of course, another aspect you can go into is like the comprehensive system of Islam. So Islam touches on literally individual level, societal level, political level, whether it's its own economic system, political system, down to everything, down to spirituality, theology, and so on.
Definitely. Before you give any more examples, I just want to home in on that point, just briefly, about the fact that Islam, submission, and, you think about the end goal. If you're being spiritual, you're looking for fulfillment. If you look for fulfillment inside, some of these philosophies that don't even claim to be divinely inspired, are you really being fulfilled? Or are you just, chasing your own desires, these vague sort of ideologies?
Yeah, exactly. I would say that you're right, man. I think it's just based on desires, because if it doesn't claim true, why would you just follow it? Is it just to make you feel better?
That's right. If you want spiritual from outside our materialistic world, you want something that transcends the bounds and the desires of humans, of, you know, the world that we see in front of us. So going back to the topic that we just touched on about some of the unique aspects of Islam, I know you talked about some of the things that make Islam different, but not necessarily these differences make it special. Can you elaborate on some of that?
Sorry, can you just repeat that again?
So you were talking about how some of the aspects of Islam that differentiate. Obviously, in the Bible, they talked about having many different authors, but that doesn't necessarily, although it's different, that doesn't necessarily hold too much epistemic weight behind it and sort of rational value to it. But then you look
Yeah.
at the fact that you'd expect a religion for mankind to have a holistic framework, something that provides guides spiritually, politically, societally, even for couples, militarily, etc. And that's what Islam provides. Can you give any other examples of some things that we look to in Islam that sort of
That's
really,
unique.
yeah, yeah.
I would also mention as well that Islam's actually, in a sense, practical religion. That doesn't mean that Muslims might not practice. Obviously, we have Muslims that do practice, but I'm just saying it's a practical religion in a sense. Let's take, for example, you know, all religions would say racism is wrong,
That's
but
right.
Islam demonstrates that through the Salah. It demonstrates it through the Hajj, the white cloth. You can't distinguish. It symbolizes that all human beings are equal in the sight of Allah, that there's no hierarchy structure, you know, like there's no like rich or poor, black or white. We're standing together, we're circulating around the Kaaba and so on. You know, the Hajj is just a perfect example, and how Malcolm X was as well.
Let's
That's what
progress
led
to the ideas of what we've established that Islam's special. Now, what about truth? How can we establish some of the aspects that support the idea that Islam's true?
Right. Okay, this is a great question. So what I like to do is I like to break things into categories. So I like to put things into categories. So number one, I'll start off is the Quran, all its miracles. So whether that be its linguistic miracle, its literary miracle, its historical miracle, its prophecies, its preservation, its transformation, its numerical miracle, and then we can go into like the preservation by, you know, language, by manuscript, by memorization, and the historical miracle we can talk about, like how Pharaoh's body will be preserved, and so on. We can go into all that. So that's the first aspect, Quran. And then the second aspect is prophethood. So we can show, for example, the Prophet, peace be upon him, that based on the biographical accounts that we have, that he is only truthful, right? As William Montgomery Watt puts it, that to say the Prophet was a liar is to raise more problems than it solves. And so we can show prophethood from the angle that he's truthful, from the angle of prophecies, from the angle of influence, from the angle of previous let's say the biblical predictions, the previous prophets mentioning his forthcoming, and so that's the second angle we can look at. And then the third angle we can look at proving Islam to be true is the rapid expansion of Islam, that how Islam dominated two superpowers in such a short span of time. As Barnabas Rogerson mentioned, it's like Eskimos taking on the United States of America and Russia at the same time. And a lot of historians to this day, like Professor Andrew Law for Byzantine Studies, mentioned it still has to be explained by historians. Of course, we can go into much detail about all these three aspects: Quran, prophethood, rapid expansion of Islam. But I see these three as together powerful evidences for the truthfulness of Islam, which can never be said for any other religion, which I believe.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. I suppose one thing to wrap up on, you talked about the preservation of the Quran, the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, his character, everything that he accomplished, etc. And you know, a lot of claims they make against his sincerity, etc. These are frankly unsubstantiated claims. The proof is there that Islam's been established, that millions of people daily turn towards the Kaaba to offer salah. And so a lot of these claims about the sincerity of the Prophet, like I said, not too much substantial evidence behind them. But a lot of people like to make moral claims about how we see Islam implemented today. You know, we use the paradigm of Saudi Arabia as an example of implementation of Sharia. And just to sort of close this video off, what would you say about people who like to use, the state of Islam today? We know that due to colonialization and the fact that the West not only has created but serves to sustain and perpetuate a lot of areas, unstable areas in the Middle East, etc. But what would you say to people that look at some examples in the Muslim world and be like, they say this is Islam, this can't be true because Sharia is
Yeah.
barbaric, etc.
Oh, right. Okay, so let's just take the last example about Sharia law. Like, again, what it is just because something's harsh doesn't equivocate, like, not necessarily logically follows it's not true, right? So, like, and I don't need to go into this obvious example, but, parents might be harsh with children, but for a greater benefit. The point we need to try to get at is this. When we're seeking truth, there's only 4 questions we need to ask ourselves. Everything else is, I would say, secondary, irrelevant. Yeah, we can discuss them, no problem, but they're irrelevant when it comes to the topic of truth. And the only questions we need to ask is the existence of God, the concept of that God. Has he communicated with us? Has he sent revelation? And if yes, which religion is it? All these secondary issues about problems in the Muslim world, that doesn't now necessarily logically any way connect, therefore Islam is not true. And in fact, if we want to go down this route, we can say, why is it you're looking at it from this angle that you're judging Islam? Why don't we judge Muslims by Islam? You know what I'm trying to say? And like, an analogy that a brother Sharif gives, for example, he says, let's say a doctor, that he might have been a bad doctor, he might have, abused you. But that doesn't obviously follow not that the prescription, the medicine, the advice is false. You know what I'm trying to say? And you could just give obviously different examples. And it doesn't mean obviously every doctor in the world is now bad as well. And so going to that example with Saudi Arabia, and again, there's another assumption that as though Saudi Arabia is Islamic. I mean, they're not even, there's no khilafah, there's no, let's say, unified Muslim community. And no Muslim in the world, like, say, Saudi Arabia is an Islamic country. Yeah, they're just a Muslim majority country. They're not following it as the reasons that you mentioned, political instability, and obviously what's the colonization, and since the collapse of the Ottoman Empire and things like that.
But to apply specific geopolitical problems, etc., to apply that is to say, this is Islam, is frankly a little bit insincere. But Akhi, I want to keep this video short, and I know you can elaborate on so many different points. And inshallah, you'll have your own series going into much more detail on a lot of these different points.
Oh yes, inshallah. That's going to be in a couple of months. Inshallah, I'll be dedicating series on miracles of the Quran, proofs for Islam, and criteria for true religion. Inshallah. Jazakallah khair.
MashaAllah. Jazakallah khair. Aki, it's been good having you on. Inshallah, I hope to have you on again soon. Jazakallah khair for everyone for tuning in. I hope you guys enjoy the video, and I hope to see you all soon. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.